What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Anime Princess, and today I want to go over the first week of this league. So the goal of this video is to showcase how easy and budget friendly it is to do a Magic Find group setup, specifically with 2 players, and I also want to show how lucrative it can be. So far this league, I've hit level 100 the ethical way through juiced mapping. We farmed at least a couple mirrors worth of currency, and we've done all this without investing very much in our characters. I'm going to go over the budget, the gear, the skill trees shortly, and you're going to see it's very easy to set up yourself. This league offers a unique opportunity to party play because the league mechanic multiplies loot in ways that have been unheard of in the past. So you really want to take full advantage of this if possible. And the most straightforward way to do this is to have a duo setup where your Aurabot is multiplying your damage so you can take advantage of all the multiplicative nature of the loot drops and you'll get so much reward. I hope this video is interesting for you guys and hope I can convert some of you, even if it's just temporarily for single league, into some group players. The B-roll footage we've been watching so far is simply day 1 lightning arrow, farming up the void stones, but the real magic happens once you get a decent bow, plus 2 arrows, some nice attack speed. You can swap over to tornado shot. So we're going to end this intro off with some highlights from the stream before we get into my gear.
Okay. We got 8 rewards, cool.
I think we should actually just... Oh my god, we dropped the unicorn! What the fuck?
I'm just down there.
Wait, is it moving yet?
No, it was just the
That's
box.
ridiculous. Doctor, let's fucking go! Oh, what is going on here?
I don't know. There's a monster or something?
I think it's this guy right
There's
here.
a rare here. It's Aurabot touched.
Oh, it's this one.
Fuck.
Beanos.
What? What the fuck? This is a lot of 6 links.
I can't even see them yet. Jeez. Maybe. True. Unicorn's lock! Let's fucking go! The second lock.
Is that a third?
No, it's a
Or a
second.
second? So it's like...
Let's jump in with the carries gear set. Here I should note, I am following my friend Haloplasm's build guide. Every league he pushes out a big YouTube video that has updates to various different party play combinations, and one of them is going to be a Magic Find bow setup. So that's what we're basing both of our trees off of. We're going to start by looking at the lightning arrow, because lightning arrow as a carry is truly 0 budget. So if you don't have anything at all, you're going to start with this. The things to note here are we're grabbing 1 pierce, and on the Ascendancies, you're going to go for focal point, which increases the effect of our sniper's mark. And I'm saying to note these 2 things because that's going to change once you swap to tornado shot. Looking at the skill setup, I did choose to run a 4-link artillery ballista to help get through the axe, kill bosses pretty easily. Eventually upped it to a 5-link. As for lightning arrow, we have a 6-link and a tabula rasa. And once you're fighting tough bosses like Eater of Worlds, Searing Exarch, you may want to drop returning projectiles for that fight only for barrage support. It just makes the fight a little bit easier. So keep that in mind. You might want to level this in your offhand. As for my items, well, the bow is really the only thing to note here. I bought a Fractured T2 flat around 1 div the first couple days. Slammed some essences. Here I got pretty lucky. I hit 2 other tier 2 flats. Actually, you don't even need to get too much flat damage on your bow because your Aurabot gives you a lot of flat damage. The main things you want are crit chance and attack speed. And we do have attack speed here. This isn't actually local attack speed, unfortunately. It was unveiled, but it's still a lot of attack speed. There's no crit chance on here. It's a pretty good bow, but it's not really ideal. It was really budget to craft. Just get a quiver with some damage on it. Doesn't really matter. You know, helmets just fixing some attribute requirements. The tabula rasa, you can just collect the div cards by that day one. This is Sedima's Touch. Now, I do have a bunch of magic find on here. There's Sedima's, there is Venter's, there is Bisco's Leash. I wouldn't worry too much about magic find if you are on zero budget league start. I mean, you just want to push as far as you can get. And once things start to feel easy, you can start putting on magic find. We already had our 2 void stones before we had a single piece of magic find gear on. So just follow Haloplasm's guide. This POB is not going to be as useful. He has notes. He has everything's real detailed. But I just want to show that, you know, everything is quite budget. Death Rush, maybe a divine. This bow, you know, you're going to pay 1 to 2 divines to craft a bow. Tabula rasa, be able to farm this yourself. I suppose my tips would be, if you do watch the VODs, you're going to see we make hundreds of chaos orbs simply using chaos recipes. So that would be my tip for a league start. Don't think you're too good for chaos recipe just because you're Aurabot with carry. You will make a ton of money and you'll be able to grab all your gear with simply chaos recipeing on the first day. Moving on to the Tornado Shot passive tree. This is a snapshot of my character as of right now, day 8, level 100. We're at 11.6 million DPS. Obviously, this is all due to the Aurabot. We disable the Aurabot, 1 million. So when you're playing, make sure you get the code from your Aurabot to be able to optimize your own damage. So we removed the pierce. Tornado Shot initial projectile will pierce everything. Pierce does work on the secondary projectiles, but it feels really bad. So we're going for chain instead. And we're also going to respec focal point into ricochet to allow +1 chain. So we can also chain off walls. When you're shooting your tornado shot, you want to shoot probably behind the enemy, and hopefully the enemy's next to a wall. So all your projectiles are going to bounce back into the boss. It's really good. I'd recommend no pierce. Get +1 chain here. And there's ways to get even more chain, but that can get expensive. So I do have a lethal pride. And there are YouTube videos on how to search for your own lethal pride. I have a video myself on my channel, and it shows what I'm about to show you here. You go find Timeless Jewel. You're going to want lethal pride in acrobatics. And for the desired nodes, double damage is probably the best. So if you search like this, it's going to generate all the best ones down, just counting based on the number of double damages it has. These ones have 4 double damage, 3. It just goes on and on. You can just copy trade URL to search the prices. They're going to be extremely expensive. I think I'm using one with only 2 double damage, but I do have a fallback node. You can. Double damage is important not only because it scales DPS, but also because when you proc a crit and you also proc double damage, it's going to magnify our ailment effects. And we're using Secrets of Suffering to give brittle. So this is going to give us a much higher brittle number on enemies if we have this double damage stat. So keep that in mind. There is a real reason why we need this double damage. And the Lethal Pride also gives us a lot of strength. We need strength to equip our gems, our Greed's Embrace. And as you can see, I don't even have any of these +30 nodes. And that's because we have a Lethal Pride. I guess we can segue into the Secrets of Suffering tech that we're using from the Interrogation small cluster. Now this cluster is really powerful because of the brittle alt ailment, which is used to cap our crit on an extreme budget. We don't need to use Hatred, base crit Watcher's Eye. We don't really even need crit on the bow. It just gives us so much base crit to multiply our damage. And Sap is good defensively, Scorch is also good offensively, so there's some other good benefits. This blocks our normal ailments, so we can no longer freeze, ignite, or shock, and that's fine. We don't want to freeze because we're using Cast on Crit, Tornado Shot, Manifold Setup to apply Warlord's Mark, and Warlord's Mark is going to give us Rage when it hits a stunned enemy that's cursed. And you can't stun something that's frozen, which is why we don't want to freeze. And this 5-link setup synergizes with tinctures if you're using tinctures as well, because you can get one with an implicit damaging hits always stun enemies that are on full life. So you will always get 20 rage when you first hit an enemy and it gets applied Warlord's Mark. This is great at sustaining our rage. You don't need this tincture, but it is an option if you are going this route. I guess the last real important thing to understand here is how to find a good bow. So let's go over my bow, talk about what makes a good bow. We have T1, T8, T3 flat cold damage. On paper, this doesn't sound too good, but keep in mind, we already crit capped with brittle, and we have an Aurabot giving us a ton of flat damage. So these flat damage rolls don't matter too much. What this bow does have is 2 additional arrows, which is very good for Tornado Shot, as well as T1 attack speed. There's even a completely dead suffix here, a chance to poison, that does nothing. So yeah, when you look at this, attacks per second, 1.73, and bows fire 2 additional arrows. That's how you evaluate if a bow is good or not. But I can show you guys how to find one of these easily. So we're going to go into our POB, make sure it's configured as best as you can. Obviously, you need to import your Aurabot in here. We go to items, trade for items, to POB feature. You might need to set up your session ID, and you just click find best for the weapon. It's going to give you trade link. We have that trade link open already, I think. Right here. You're going to want to edit that trade link though. It's giving you all these weightings because it knows exactly how much attack speed, how much damage, how much crit you have. It's going to weigh all these things appropriately, but it's not going to have this down here. So you're going to have to add in bows fire additional arrows. You could choose 2, you could choose 1 if you're on a budget. And you know, if you don't do a maximum for the price, you're just going to see extremely expensive stuff because you have to sort by sum. This is how you find the best ones. So this one 14 minutes ago, this is the absolute best bow on the market for my character. So we can see attacks per second, 1.58. It's not even as good as my current bow. The prefixes are T9, T0, T1. Suffixes, crit multi is good because we have perfect crit chance. We have high base damage, you know, attack speed. Let's fire 2 additional arrows. Let's just import this in. I didn't pay 45 for this though. I paid 4 divine for the bow I have. Just import this in. This one. So I go from 11.6 up to 11.9. So it's not even that much better. But yeah, that's how you would find your bow if you don't know how to craft one. And again, these are all very expensive at the top. This one's 15. You could just, I would just put a price limit though. Let's just say 1,000 chaos. Well, 199.8 versus 199.8. I guess I'd probably choose the 125 chaos one. This would be your bow. It's got the attack speed. A little bit, not as much as mine, and 2 arrows. Let's go over the rest of the gear piece by piece fairly quickly. The helmet, got some int on there. You need a lot of int. I was able to squeeze in some rarity. That's always nice for magic find. And then there's just lightning res, fizz taking its fire. Those are nice defensive stats. It is nice to be res capped, or at least to get as much of it as you can, because sometimes your Aurabot's going to be a little bit too far away from you and you're going to lose all the resistances he gives you. Determination and Grace do expand their AoE with quality, but the purities don't work like that anymore. So there are going to be situations where you have a lot of armor, you have a lot of evasion, but your Aurabot's too far away, and you get insta-killed because your res isn't capped. And just keep that in mind as something you could try and optimize for. As for the quiver, bow fires, an additional arrow is the one mandatory mod you have to get here. I have a lot of projectile speed and a bunch of damage mods. In your POB, you can go to calculations, projectile speed. Projectile speed is important for your secondary projectiles because it's going to let them chain further. It's going to let your secondary projectile shoot really far. So I have a lot of projectile speed here. We're also getting projectile speed from our clusters. I was talking to Manny on his stream, and he said you should get a 200% multiplier in the MISC section here, which would mean you'd want a 300% in the POB. So we're at a little bit over 200%. You know, we're getting it from Streamlined. There's a bit on the tree, and then obviously we're getting it on the quiver. So it's the quiver there, plus 1 arrow here, plus 2 arrow here. That's the main thing. For the amulet, you have some options. I chose not to go ascetic because ascetic means you need a white quiver and a magic helmet, or vice versa. And I wanted to hit 100, right? We're level 100 now. Maybe I could do ascetic, but you know, I'm just going for the more defensive option. Eyes of the Great Wolf, get some quant, get another implicit that does something, I suppose. You could also go just whatever. If you want some more damage, you could go with, or is it? Here he's Truth. Although we do have an Aurabot, so they could probably run the precision. And the crit multis on here is nice, but Culling Strike we can actually get elsewhere. You can get Culling Strike either on the Tincture, or you can get one through this jewel here, that which was taken. There are critical strikes that have Culling Strike, or just plain old Culling Strike that can roll on this. So you keep an eye out for that. Death Rush, this is budget, and it is a lot of movement speed, a lot of damage, a lot of fizz damage reduction. This is great. Inventors, you know, it's not the best. There's even negative rarity on there, but it is capping my resistances. Well, not perfectly capping, but it's getting them as close as possible. I'm getting some quant on there, so it's pretty nice. It just fixes my res. Sedimas, if you can, I would get attacks have base crit. You may not need to get this since we are using brittle, but that would be a nice implicit if it's not too expensive. Otherwise, you know, just put on any Sedimas. It doesn't really matter. Bisco's a leash. There are some nice belt corruptions, but I need the strength. For the boots, Goldworm, a bunch of other good corruptions on here. I went chance to suppress spell damage to perfectly cap my spell suppress. You can also get movement speed. You could get regen. There's a lot of corruptions. Some are cheaper than others. And you might be noticing there's no sockets in there. I will talk about my Wildwood Ascendancy shortly, but we're getting movement speed from no sockets in there. That's the reason. Greed's Embrace. I spent a little bit more to get a corrupted implicit. Plus gem levels don't matter for your tornado shot because it's not a spell. You could, well, I don't think this really needs plus levels either, so I just went with some increased damage on the corruption. As for the flasks, we've got this tincture right here, which is buffing the 2 flasks next to it. So we got this magic fine flask being buffed. We've got the gold flask being buffed. And I'll go over the jewels real quick. We already talked about Lethal Pride. We already talked about Interrogation. And just now I talked about that which was taken. there's a lot of good mods you can get on here. Again, I also have spell suppression here to cap my spell suppress. The other two mods don't really matter. There's the large cluster. There are quite a few good modifiers you could get. I went with arcing shots, fuel the fight for some mana leech, and then martial prowess. If you don't have mana leech here, you can just spec this node and get leeches instant, and it's going to feel really good. The last jewel I'm using is something I sniped in the first few days because I knew this would get expensive. So this is another expensive piece. It is Chaos Res while affected by Purity Elements, because as a magic finder, you just don't have a real good way to get Chaos Res. And I was able to get crit multi as well, which makes this a very expensive jewel. The fizz damage taken as cold is also useful because as an Aurabot, we basically have all auras, including Purity of Ice. But yeah. The only necessary thing here is the Chaos Res, I'd say. To wrap this tornado shot up with Warden of the Magi, which is the Ascendancy from the lead mechanic that we chose. First off, we go Oath of the Magi for 30% increased movement speed if the boots have no socketed gems, and this is shared with the Aurabot through Soul Link. Next up, we get a tincture with Coated Blade, which I'm using right here. And we go Nature's Concoction so that the flasks adjacent to the tincture have increased effect. So my tincture, the implicit is damaging hits always stun enemies that are on full life. The alternative would be Culling Strike. And I'm going for increased rarity and chance to gain rage when you hit a rare or unique enemy. And it's buffing our Magic Pine flasks. The last point, if you have the reservation for it, you should go Bark Skin. I don't have the reservation because I'm using Petrified Blood. So I just went for some increased quantity of wisps because those wisps provide so much magic fine juice that I think that's worth it. Okay, we can go whenever it's recording. All right, so this is the Aurabot Slayer, and we're going to go over his gear setup because we invested most of our money on the Aurabot at the league start since we're going for a more magic find oriented carry. So I guess let's go over the gear.
Yeah. So at the start of the league, Aurabot gear is actually pretty expensive compared to as it is like right now. Like Victario's up to 50C, Sign of the Sin Eater with like a decent strength int roll can get pretty pricey. The Bonic Trails with high res efficiency are going to be expensive. Prism Guardians is going to be a couple div. People usually use the Vertex Valmask instead of Alpha's Hell to get an extra aura in. And then, plus gems, Valkyries are also going to be pretty expensive. So this character, although it doesn't look that expensive right now, is very expensive in the first 2 days of the league. And with how bow skills work, you don't really need, or I guess without how any skill works in general, you don't really need that much gear on a carry character when your Aurabot has, all 14 auras up or whatever. As far as gear priority, I think we focused on getting Jinx Juju and Victario's as soon as possible, along with Sign of the Sin Eater, because level 30 Smite is just a lot of flat lightning damage. Censure of the Benevolence, you don't actually need one of these until you're getting into tier 16 maps. This belt is mostly meant to buff your carry.
The carry gets all your flasks, right?
All the magic flasks. We don't actually have Ruby Flask on the carry, but your carry could be running a Dying Sun if you want to do that, if you're not fully spec'd into MF. So yeah, it gives triple LE, or I guess double LE plus Chaos plus Granite Flask, because we were dying a lot to Chaos damage early on. But as soon as we got the Chaos Res Jewel for the carry and the Amethyst Flask, we're capped on Chaos Res, both of us.
And that belt's also pretty good because we're sharing the suffixes as well. So the carry is getting just a crazy amount of suffixes from flasks.
Curse effect, crit chance, evasion, armor. And you can shuffle around the suffixes on either character. It pretty much just depends on what you hit. Valkyries is also an insanely strong item.
And you need the corruption, right?
Corruption is nice, but we weren't running corruption for a while.
True.
You could get either +2 duration, +2 AoE, or +2 aura.
And that gives us max res, right?
Yeah, it gives us max res and also juices up our discipline level. I can swap my discipline to a different. So this is what, a level 22 discipline. I put it in here. It's level 27 discipline. That gives me 500 ES just softening this gem in here. People sometimes put their Val Smite in here when they drop Sign of the Sin Eater to get a higher level smite, but we weren't really struggling on damage, and we were struggling a lot more on survivability.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I think sure the Benevolence, Valkress, 2 important items. Valkress, it's perfectly fine running one without a +2 implicit at first, just because it gives so much juice to the purities.
True.
So if you look at my res, it's 90 all res. I have +1 from this, so it's 89 all res on the carry, but you can get +1 somewhere else.
True.
We were also for using, oh no, never mind. Yeah. And then the big thing is we're using the Elegant Hubris Jewel. And we got very, very lucky when we dropped this and running a 4-way to unlock our 5-way. This is like one of the best in slot Marauder jewels because it gives 12, 24, 36, 48% non-curse aura effect. This is huge. It went for like 200 div last week.
Yeah.
You don't need this Elegant Hubris. There's like plenty of Elegant Hubrises up here. Probably not one over here, but maybe the green jewel over here or the green jewel up here that you can replace this with. But this gives us what well, okay, this is a +1 max fire res, so it's +3 all res and 400 what is it, 400 ES plus a bunch of damage and all of the offensive auras.
But so since it's just aura effect and aura reservation efficiency, the build still works without that. It's just like a goal you can have to improve it.
Yeah, starting out the league, the very most important things you want is a 3 passive reservation jewel. This is an ID3 one. I was using like an I56 one with like 2 max ES for a while. You really just care about the reservation efficiency. That plus the bubonics, plus a Prism Guardian, plus what is it? You're not going to get this if you're not going for the Marauder jewel, but if you get Champion of the Cause, you should have enough to fit 14 auras. My auras, because I have an Alpha's Howl, I don't really need that much more into res efficiency until I swap over to using the effect. I swap either over into CI or using the effect shield. And you could also use the what's it called? The res efficiency charms. We just didn't want to spend the money because we were saving up to buy a mirror as soon as possible. So I don't have res efficiency charms. Let's see. Go over the charms, plus min endurance charges, regen, max mana as ES, and then nearby enemies cannot gain charges, and max mana as ES, and movement speed cannot be modified. I don't think the movement speed mod actually helps that much, though, because of how the link mastery works. This link mastery is huge for support Aurabot.
Oh, and it synergizes with my Ascendancy as well. Because we're into having no gems in my boots to get 30% movement speed, and then this link gives him all the movement speed my character has, so I'm just doing everything to scale my movement speed, and then he doesn't need to scale his movement speed at all, basically, right?
I have 0 movement speed because I don't have a Magic Abyss jewel. So this is why well, first of all, bows are just strong in general right now, but this is why the bow plus Aurabot duo is so strong,
super fast,
is because of the movement speed ascendancy. Normally you have to like juice up your haste a lot if you want, and I can even generosity this haste if I wanted to. It makes the smite feel a lot worse, and haste was also the last aura we got in. Most of my jewel sockets right now are taken up by unique jewels and the res efficiency jewel. So this jewel right here gives you 3 points back. It's not the most important early on. It's only when you're getting up into the high 90s and you want to like stretch your tree out, or you're getting what's it called, a Voices jewel to get the more res efficiency.
It's not too expensive though, right?
Yeah. No, this was 80C on League Start. It's like 30 or 40C now. This character is very point starved just because you have to go all the way over the tree, collect Ghost Dance, collect Divine Shield. If you didn't have the Marauder Jewel, you can just cut this part out. This gives you a lot of points back. If I wanted to spec the Voices right now, I'd probably have to drop Unnatural Instinct and Mage Bane in order to just fit the number of points. Maybe I'd have to drop, I don't know, this Arbor cluster as well.
And what would that extra reservation efficiency let us accomplish?
We'd be able to drop the Prism Guardian for a, was it Matahu Tahi or whatever.
For more aura effect, true.
Aura effect is more evasion on your grace. It's more armor on your determination.
Yeah.
It's more flat damage on your flat damage auras. It's more crit chance on your precision. It's everything.
It's more damage. It's more defense.
I haven't looked into specking into that because we really haven't been spending money on our characters until recently. Yeah,
after saving money.
We got the mirror yesterday. We spent what, like 15 div? 10 div maybe max on this regalia. We got really good
we spent 10 div on the prefixes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We spent 10 div on the prefixes plus, I don't know, 3 div maybe on hitting the suffixes.
So let's talk about this swap though, because you were using these 2 budget items in your inventory up until yesterday.
You need Resolute Technique on your Ephemeral Edge because you don't have you don't have the slots for additional accuracy on your Smite skill when you're doing this, because when you swap over to the Regalia, you put the Smite in the Generosity links.
But this isn't needed. We hit level 100. We farmed a mirror before we did this swap. This was just because now Slayer's level 99, I'm level 100, so we're trying to tank him up a little bit more so we can both hit 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like, I don't know, the aspirational is what I think Haloplasm's guide calls it.
True.
Aspirational setup.
Okay, so Slayer, AoE is pretty important to get on Aurabot, right? How are we getting our AoE, and why is it important?
Okay, area is important on Aurabots because if your carry is running around killing things, if they run out of your range, they're going up 300 miles an hour while you're picking up, I don't know, chaos or something on the ground, they'll just die instantly because they no longer have your defensive buffs. And when they die, you die because of how links work. So you're down 20% XP on both characters, you're down 2 portals on your map, and it becomes really dangerous because you're not in the mapping flow state. So there might be monsters waiting for you. So we get a bunch of AoE from, we used a Natural Instinct. There's about 3 div. I had to unspec some armor nodes over here to get it, but it gives, 12, 24, 36% AoE. We also swapped from level 21 Determination and Grace to 2020 with Quality on them, just to get the 40% increased AoE. And sadly, the Purities don't have Aura AoE on them anymore.
And that's why on my character, I tried to res cap without him, because there are situations where I'm getting the armor, but I'm not getting the res, right?
That's not, I think only your fire res will be uncapped because the link.
Oh, true. We do have.
Yeah. We have double.
The link doesn't break. True. All right.
That's why you go Pathfinder. Pathfinder doesn't have duration, but it has gain 3 charges every 3 seconds and chance to not consume charges, which gives you perma uptime on Coruscating. Coruscating also very important part of this build, because since you're reserving your life, you don't have CI or you don't have a Shavs. You have to make sure that you don't get instantly one-shot from Chaos damage. We convert 10% of Fizz to Chaos. We try to cap our Chaos res. My Chaos res is capped with a flask. That's not the best. I could probably get better rings, but we bought these early on into the league. And you want to make sure that your Coruscating has reuse on end of flask effect, and you're always keeping an eye on it. You don't have to always be pressing it because of how this works, but generally you can't be running reduced flask charges gained maps because there will be chances, especially during this league mechanic, where you're just running around and you're not killing monsters and your Coruscating will run out of charges. And then you either have to tell your carry, oh, hold up, my flask is out of charges, can we wait a second? Or if it's like a desecrated ground map, you'll just die instantly because you're at 1 HP.
Right.
And this has happened quite a few times.
Sure.
And it's very tilting.
So let's go over your buttons, because you have more buttons to press than I do, right?
I have a lot of buttons to press.
So how are we using the skill bar?
All right. So main important thing, this is a tech that Anime Princess taught me, is you can have different auras on your weapon swap. So I have all of my mana reservation auras on my weapon swap. So I can turn these all on, turn these on, swap back, and then I turn my
the ones on your shield are on your main
on. So if I die after a map,
it's faster to get back in. So the main thing Slayer's saying here is you want to have your weapon swap bound to a button that's easy to press, and all the auras in like your chest, boots, and stuff, like the stuff that aren't in your weapon or your shield, you have them on your weapon swap hotbar, and then so you can turn all those on real quick, and then you weapon swap, and your main secondary hotbar is all the other ones. that are on your, weapon and shield or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what else do you have to do? Because you still have a bunch of buttons on your hotbar.
So yeah, I'm constantly casting my link skill. Hold on, let me go to your hideout.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not in the game.
No, I'm not.
Wait, let me go to someone's hideout. You constantly casting your aura on
your link. Yeah.
your link on your friend. It has a 16-second cooldown, but it doesn't cost mana to cast. It has a cast. It has a what's it called? Mana per second.
And if you're not linked, you don't get the movement speed, so you'll know instantly when you lose the link.
What else? So I have 3 Valoras. These are mainly defensive for when we pop boxes or an abyss in high delirious maps. Val Rejuve Totem, which states 40% of damage and hits against targets affected by the aura is taken from the totem's life before your target. Also gives 700 regen.
It's a big circle on the ground, and you guys stand in it, and you take less damage.
Val Rejuve Totem is the biggest damage reduction for both of you when you press it.
Yeah.
So I generally try to save this for when it's the biggest scary amount of mobs. You can also activate the banner, which gives increased effect when you place it, and it also gives a taunt, which gives 15% less damage on enemies. And it's a pretty big aura. It's like basically the entire screen. And when it's at 50 charges, it's more than the entire screen. And Defiance Banner is also free to cast because you're killing so many monsters in these maps. You get the charges back up basically instantly. So you're constantly using Smite every 4 seconds. Since you're a champion, you get Taunt and Intimidate, which, let's see, Taunt is enemies you taunt deal 10% less damage to anything else, and Intimidated enemies take 10% increased damage. So you're constantly slamming your Smite on enemies. It has a pretty big acquisition range. When you're zoning into a zone, most important, first thing, press core skating, always. You will die instantly if you don't have a core skating. Second, link your carry so they get your buffs. Third, activate your other flasks.
True.
That's usually my order of operations when we're zoning in. So, as you can see, Smite actually has a pretty big acquisition range. So you don't have to be in melee range to hit monsters. You can be half a screen away, maybe. And since you're scaling so much AoE on your character, you're also getting the Smite taunt on a bunch of monsters in the radius. This is also why you either need resolute techniques or additional accuracy on your Smite, because you want your Smite to hit every time.
Yeah.
It feels really bad.
And precision isn't enough to get 100%.
No, I have precision on generosity, so it doesn't affect me.
Oh, I see.
Back when we were running the precision amulet on you, it might have been enough, but your aura radius is a lot smaller than my aura radius. So just because you're being affected by my auras, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm being affected by your auras. And that's an issue occasionally because the Aurabot uses putative elements.
If I run too far away from Slayer, he can get frozen. So once all your flasks are activated and we're running through the map together, you're mostly just pressing your link once every, 16 seconds, and then you're smiting once every 4.
Yeah, whenever
That's the rotation.
I'll smite it. I'll flame dash if he blinks away.
And if there's like a really crazy monster, you're dropping your cooldowns.
I'm dropping my cooldowns.
So essentially, the gameplay isn't actually too intimidating for an Aurabot. You don't have too many buttons, but the main thing you will be doing in maps is you're going to be doing a lot of looting because the carry can't really stop shooting when the map is super juiced. So you're going to be the one responsible for picking up all the divines, all the div cards, right? At least until the carry kills everything.
Yeah. So Path of Building actually implemented a party play thing quite recently, which is really nice for looking at your carries DPS in maps or during bosses or something. But it's a bit tricky to import a support character. So you want to first, do the average POB thing, import your character, blah, blah, blah. You want to make sure that your Val skills, you don't actually have these on. You have these on. Because they're Val skills in the, what's it called? In the Val Caress, it's going to think that you want the Val skills triggered, but you want the purities and the discipline triggered. What else? We want... it doesn't know if you have cluster jewel spec, so you want to inspect the cluster jewels, turn on the flasks, and then double check everything else. activate Smite instead of All Smite because I don't click Val Smite. And then you can activate Multiple Shell if you wanted, but I don't think so. Number of link targets 1. That doesn't really change anything.
Change the enemy boss type.
Oh, and enemy
Guardian Pinnacle.
Yeah, so I have roughly 200k effective hit pool, which is pretty good. It's
Similar
just because
to mine.
of how, Ghost Dance and the Defined Shield interact.
Mm-hmm. So are we fully configured right now, or is there more we need to?
So it looks like we're fully configured. You want to check
enable
export
support. Okay.
And then I copy it as a plugin. So now if you import it into the party config,
that's how you get your carry's true DPS, right?
Yeah. It tells you what all the auras you have and their aura effect.
Which is really important because that's how your carry can optimize his gear. He needs to know what he's getting from the Aurabot.
So at the start of the league, we didn't know how expensive or rare charms would be. We didn't really want to mess with any of that. So we knew that charms would be the end game class for everyone just because of how strong they are, and you get the extra rucksack, which means that you get more inventory slots to take out more loot and more currency per map or per portal, which is very important when you're running super juiced MF maps. But at the start of the league, we actually ran Choir of the Damned because it gave us penance mark. So that means we could have extra Val Souls, extra flasks, and extra just enemies to kill during like a boss that doesn't have any ads.
Yeah,
that's
so
important
like
because
Death Rush, right?
Yeah, because we get adrenaline on kill from Death Rush, so that's an extra 100% attack damage and a bunch of attack speed versus a single target boss that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Basically, anything that procs on kill now works with bosses as well.
Yeah, and it also gave me slightly better core skating uptime, and it let me depending on how tanky the boss was, it sometimes let me get a second cast off of the Val skills because they do give Val souls. Also give chain. It gives what was really important. It gave the if one of the lightning arrow projectiles hit hit the additional monsters that spawned, it would shotgun the effect onto the lightning bolt explosion effect onto the boss. So it's slightly more DPS. It's more quality of life. When you're going super poverty invest mode and you don't want to spend a couple div on a charm here or there, and this tree I felt like was really
and I think my sniper's mark was working with your penance mark. It didn't count as an extra curse.
That was bug. I'm not sure if that's a bug or that's intended or something. It would have both the sniper's mark effect and the penance brand effect on the boss. Val Pact, that's just more flash charges and more Val cells, so our core skating doesn't run out. And then I took the Wild Wisp.
Just took the small nodes, true.
Because we thought that the purple gave quant.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was in the announcement, but they got it wrong.
True.
You don't want to take Sanguinemancy because that breaks your mana reservation. Just Summon Dark Effigy, I took it, but it costs life to cast. And since I'm reserving all of my life, I couldn't cast it. So I ended up taking Ravenous, which did nothing because I wasn't casting it a mob every zone.
True. Awesome. Thanks for sharing the Aurabot point of view. I definitely learned some things I wasn't aware of. This video isn't meant to be a farming strategy, but I will include what we're doing very briefly. I may make a dedicated video on this in the future. This is the Atlas passive tree we are currently running. I have Burial Chamber favorited in every single slot, and we are running 8 mod Burial Chambers. We get them either by rolling them ourselves or by using a dedicated strategy with the Sextant that farms a lot of 8 mod maps. For Sextants, we run Extra Strong boxes, Beyond, Enraged Strong boxes, and Mirror of Delirium. For Sextants, we run Gilded Abyss, Gilded Divination, Gilded Ambush, and any color of Elder. For the map device, we run Alva missions if we have them, and we mod Ambush for 4 additional strong boxes at 4 chaos. As for the league mechanic, we aim to get yellow and blue juice And in our opinion, purple juice is second rate, but we'll take it if it's all that we can find. When we filter our 8-mod maps, we refuse to run reduced flash charges because this makes coruscating elixir very difficult to maintain. It can kill the Aurabot. Monsters cannot be stunned. You can't run that if you're doing the rage tech. Non-cursed auras, horrible. Minus max res with the Wandering Path tree is pretty nasty. And these top two, maybe you could run, but we were pushing 100, so we decided to play it safe, and we weren't running these. I've kept a spreadsheet that tabulates our drops as well as what we get from the league mechanic. So as you can see, so far we've run 57 maps with this strategy. We've dropped 285 fortunate cards, or on average 5.3 per map. We have dropped 91 pure divine orbs, or 3.6 per map, although this is inflated because we do have a divine orb shrine in one map. We've dropped 2 Hinakora's locks. We've dropped 2 doctors and various other things I haven't recorded. And then you can match up the amount of juice with what we received. And I'm gonna wrap up this video with a big shout out to my boys Seike and Haloplasm. Not only were they the Aurabot and carry duo that published this guide, they also helped me out voice chat and in DMs to make sure I was on track, following it properly. Much appreciated. Yeah, great league start, had a lot of fun. May consider doing this again in the future. We'll see. All right, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you live on Twitch. Peace.